Hello and welcome to the heliosblog. My name is Helios. Whether you're chilling on your couch or in your coffin, make sure to stay tuned with us to keep you entertained. Today, there's a debate on the Whatever podcast between Destiny and Jasmine Jafar versus Lyle Rose Trent Horn. This should be a doozy.
The reason she's alone is because she's difficult.
Women are not accepting the bare minimum.
Women fuck men they respect.
All the women who say things like, I'm strong, independent, I don't need no man, like, y'all impress me.
Women just gaslight each other and say what they want to hear.
I got a boyfriend. I was like, I want to try out choking, and we both agree that this is what we want to do. How is that harmful?
Are you saying that it's not bad for a 13-year-old girl to seek out choking porn?
No.
Indeed. It's horrible. And obviously it's going to be destructive.
I don't think it's bad. I think if that's what
so
you're
then
into.
So you think maybe it's a good thing to show that to her.
And I also want to say, where is this harm?
You think, repeat this, it's not
Straw man argument is, it sounds to me like what this is.
Not bad for a 13-year-old girl to seek out porn where women are choked as part of sexual violence.
I don't think it's wrong for girls when they're exploring their sexuality and they do that through...
Right, anything is fine so long as they're quote-unquote exploring. Yeah, just let them be free and do whatever they want. Nothing could possibly go wrong.
Porn, if they like being dominated, like I'm one of these girls, to see that represented in porn.
Would it be wrong for an adult to show a 13-year-old girl that?
Yes, but that's different. It's different because there's an imbalance thing. You're not supposed to show children this, but if a child, like I was 13,
how about
14,
a 16-year-old boyfriend shows it to her?
If he's like, hey, are you into this? I don't think that's bad either.
Wait, 16-year-old boyfriend with a 16-year-old girlfriend or 16-year-old boyfriend with a 13-year-old girlfriend?
Yeah, that's...
With a 13-year-old girlfriend.
Oh, well, that's different. It's 3 years. 3 years
15.
is typically... If it's within before it becomes statutory rape, when they're not even supposed to be having sex, if it's 16 and 13, in most states, they're not even supposed to be having sex. So
for 16 and 14, I know that the Romeo and Juliet laws differ in every case.
15 and 16 or 13 and 14, whatever you want to say. If it's two people of the same age and they're just exploring what each other likes and there's consent and both people are comfortable with it and it turns them on, it's okay for them to explore.
That's an adult thing to say, but a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old don't have the capacity to understand that nuance, which means that rules need to be in place at that age, right? And standards need to be put in place at that age. Also, those sites that the girl is saying is okay for those kids to look at, they're also not meant for children. I mean, that isn't to say that children don't access them, but...
Now let's go back then. So it sounds...
That relates to the degeneracy of society more than anything else.
It's like what you're saying is, so fine, 13, how about a 10-year-old girl is looking up this stuff?
I mean, that's really young, but I think that's still part of like normal exploration. I agree, I wish this wasn't available to children.
Then why would you say that it's okay if you wish it wasn't available? Your stance should be, not only do I wish it wasn't available, but they shouldn't access it or be allowed to access it.
Are children harmed when they see pornography?
Well, the research on that is kind of mixed. I actually have a couple.
So your answer is I don't know?
The answer is that there's research going in both ways, and it's not just me that.
So if the research, so let me ask this: so if the research goes both ways and we don't know, should it be a crime? Should it be a crime then to show children pornography?
Yeah, I think children, yes, but we're not talking about.
But why? Because
a 10-year-old is considered a child.
You're saying we don't even know if it causes harm.
It's also a crime to give children alcohol. Is alcohol bad? And the other thing I wanted to point out
can be very bad for children.
Yes, it's extremely bad for children. If you take it as a child, your likelihood of becoming an alcoholic is like 100 times higher, something like that.
Here's why it's a crime to give children alcohol. That children cannot consent to activities that are capable of gravely damaging them or even damaging them at all. Like kids have to have their parents sign them up for sports teams. They can't just sign up on their own. So it seems like then that
they're not able to make those judgments themselves. Yeah, as I said myself earlier, children don't have the capacity to understand the nuance of such things.
We'd have to agree that if porn doesn't damage kids, then they don't need parents, they don't need consent, and they don't need a law to protect them, right? If it doesn't damage them.
I think that it's really mixed on if it damages or doesn't. So to err on the safe side with children, I'm okay with. I wish we could keep it away from children, but we can't.
So why would you say that it's okay then? if you think you should keep it away from them. And with regards to whether you can't or not, you probably could. All you'd have to do is put a parental block on the computer, and that's easy enough, right? You could just Google the, let's say, 100 most popular sites, and block against all of them. And then the likelihood of them accessing that content is much lower. Also, no access to phones when they're young, and keep the family computer in a public place, right? And there you go. You've prevented the problem. Congratulations.
Can I? Okay, let me.
So by that
to
logic, then, people, there's differing opinions about whether childhood football damages children too much.
It does.
Or not. So by that logic,
according to
we
studies,
should treat childhood football teams as being as wrong and necessary to outlaw as showing porn to children.
What? Okay, wait. Here's a question.
Which doesn't make any sense.
What damages the child?
Yeah,
yes, that's my question.
No, that's my question to you now.
Well, you're the ones promoting sex work and pornography.
So sure. So I'm asking where
question.
you draw the line, because you're saying that it's clearly not. You're saying that porn is clearly over the line, despite the fact that you presented absolutely zero data to support that point. So you're giving that a child being exposed to pornography when they're 11 or 12 or 13 or whatever are having all these negative outcomes. I don't think you provided a single stat for any of that, or a single point for any of that, other than it feels wrong.
I mean,
which is fine. It can feel wrong.
I did provide that. I mentioned the 2016 Wright et al. Study with the 22 countries, 22
that
studies.
Was of children?
Sorry.
That sounded of all people.
It's talking about children, young people, and rise of aggression and use of pornography. That's 22 studies across 7 countries. There are other studies that we can put forward.
Okay, so there's right.
But even beyond the studies, it's just an obvious.
Okay,
stop.
I don't like this.
Yeah, it's. I'm inclined to agree that it is an obvious. It is an obvious point, right? It doesn't really need to be backed by facts, data, and statistics. It's intuitively obvious, right? It's not like what we're talking about is statistics or quantum theory or things of that nature that are very hard to understand intuitively. This is intuitively obvious. You shouldn't be exposing children to bedroom fun content before their bedroom fun mature, and kind of, how would I explain it, pervert their brains or wreck their brains at a young age to this idea. I'm not a Puritan or anything. I just think there needs to be more control over things of that nature, because it does seem to be destructive for society to be so bedroom fun liberated. When that liberation movement happened in the 1960s, it was very hard to access that sort of thing. Now it's not. And you can see what damage it's caused. Not really to boys so much as it has to girls.
I would like to finish, and I would love to hear your response. It just seems obvious to me that if a 12-year-old boy has access to Pornhub and can freely search it, it won't take him long to find what we consider extreme pornography.
And if he finds extreme pornography, what are those outcomes? So you talked about sexual aggression. There's a meta-analysis from the 1970s to 2020, and it shows that some show that there is, some show that there's not, but the studies that were done over a longer period, the link was weakened. It's also been found that studies that employed higher level of best practices tended to provide less evidence of a potential link.
There's a meta-analysis.
The biggest predictors for sexual aggression, number 1, alcohol. So again, is because alcohol seems to be actually showing us more conclusive harm in all of these respects. Is alcohol harmful? Is it bad?
There's a meta.
I mean, we know it's bad. That's why it's banned for children. We know that. And it's controlled in pretty much all countries that it's in, right? It's not, you can't just do whatever you want with it. But again, TikTok isn't banned, and it's obvious that it's having negative effects on society.
I mean, in excess, it is absolutely. There's a meta-analysis that Trent and I have both referenced that say that porn is connected to aggression, including
but you're right,
young
and that's
people.
why. And that's why, for example, with alcohol, what we do is we have very stringent barriers to make sure to try to keep minors away from alcohol, even though they do that. So, for example, would you agree we ought to have very stringent barriers to keep children away from pornography? For example, all pornographic websites should require age verification.
I think that the problem is that practically speaking, the ones that are going to implement that are going to be the bigger ones, but it's the internet. You can't control the internet. So what's going to happen is those sketchy sites in Russia are going to be.
Why don't we just have a rule that all pornographic websites have to have a XXX domain, and then we can put them in one area that requires age verification? How about that?
If there was a way that we could actually make it so that you had to verify your age to be on these, then that it wouldn't lead to just moving people over to sketchier places where they can still access, because I don't know if you know, the internet's pretty easy to find like crazy shit. You don't, and even if you go, especially the sketchier.
What's worse on the sketchier stuff?
What do you mean what's worse?
You're saying you're worried that if you use age verification to keep a kid off Pornhub, he'll go to a sketchier website.
So the sketchier stuff, so for instance, places like Pornhub right now, they have gotten way stricter with the type of content you can put out. You can't put out, like, if you search rape on Pornhub, nothing comes up. But if you go to like some of these sketchier ones, they do come up. So your issue is more.
Can you do step-sibling incest?
Yeah, and I don't think that's necessarily. Like, okay, if someone views step-sibling incest, what are they doing? What are they doing with that that's so harmful to society?
Is step-sibling incest bad?
Watching step-sibling incest.
No, I'm just saying, is the act of step-sibling incest bad?
I wouldn't say it's 100% bad, and I want to know, if you're saying it's bad, why? Where are the outcomes? Because I'm looking at outcomes.
Because family members shouldn't have sex with each other. That seems
I'm
pretty
looking
obvious.
at outcomes here. So I'm saying, if people are watching this more aggressive
because
porn,
if you have two,
where is that?
Come on.
What a disaster. Like, again, one side is arguing for like what's intuitively obviously obvious, for lack of a better word, what any person with two brain cells to rub together would conclude. And then the other side is arguing for what? For just let kids do whatever they want, it'll be fine. Well, clearly it hasn't been fine, because so many young people are turning out as disasters. And what do I mean that? I mean, there's less marriages, less long-term relationships, more hookups, and so on. And again, it's not the men that are doing it, it's the women. 80%. Like in the West, like girls are hooking up with the top 20, right? So most guys aren't even getting laid like that. Okay, anyway, let's continue.
I don't need a study to know that I shouldn't have sex with my sister, whether she's by law or blood or brother.
Is watching it increasing step-sibling incest? That's my question. Is watching this stuff increasing it happening? Are people having more incest now in real life, or are they just watching it?
It desensitizes one to it, yes.
So, but is that actually leading? Because the same thing happens with violent porn, but there's a lot of studies that show it can kind of have a cathartic effect, and that sexual crimes actually decrease when people watch it. So my question is,
there's a meta-analysis with 22 studies that show that increased use in porn increases in
okay, and this is a meta-analysis of even more that shows that some of them do, some of them don't, but the ones that had best practices show a weakened link. So I guess
what best practices?
Best practices means like having the like peer review, better control group, more people.
Oh, you're talking about studies, not the porn.
Yeah, I'm talking about studies. So the studies that have best practices employed, that's what this meta-analysis from 1970 to 2020 found, show that that link is actually weakened. And then if you look at actual crimes happening in society,
I am surprised by is that you can't make a moral decision without saying, well, let's see what these psychological studies say, even though we're in the midst of a replication crisis. Well, let me finish. We're in the midst of a replication crisis where many sociological studies, in some instances 70 or 80%, can't be
replicated. They have huge issues with replicability, which means that their conclusions are false.
Replicated. So we don't know if the study's conditions are accurate. We can't just go with the very basic element of, hey, getting an erection at watching fake rape, that's probably a bad scenario. That's probably bad if people do that.
Well, here's the thing. You're talking about incest, right? If we're seeing
that's
that
bad. That's also rape.
People are watching step-sibling, step-sister stuff. It's not making them more likely to do it. We have no evidence. It's not leading to greater aggression in society.
Hold on a second.
It's not leading to anything. If the harm is just minimized to them seeing it and being aroused by it, is that inherently bad?
I just want to get something clear.
And if so, why?
Can I get something clear? You're okay with people being aroused and ejaculating over rape porn. You're okay with that?
As long as it's something that, if it's not real and if it's consensual actors,
and
yes,
you're
I'm
okay with someone getting aroused and ejaculating over incest porn?
Yeah, as long as,
and would you be okay with someone ejaculating and being aroused over child sexual assault material, provided it wasn't a real child, it was a simulation?
And same thing, if it was a simulation, I would look at what the consequences are. If it's leading, especially when some of them show.
Here we go. So what's funny, and what you've noticed, I hope, is that she's increasing the severity of the questions, and the girl's just agreeing with everything. So really, she's just saying, let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Everything will be fine if we just do it how we've always done it. But the problem is, if you just hold hands and sing Kumbaya, it isn't going to be okay. That's the problem. Society's on a downward trajectory, and there's a reason for that. And that's maybe a little bit too much bedroom fun liberation, maybe a little bit too much wokeism and womanism, maybe a little bit too much departure from traditional values.
It's leading to less actual harm to children, or if it's leading to less sexual aggression in person, if it's leading to less SAs, which a lot of studies show, then I think yes. I think if you're just getting aroused by it, but there's no harm being done.
What about a child being raped, but it's a simulation, and it's okay for someone to ejaculate over that, in your mind?
I would say that if
You see how she's making it more and more extreme each time?
Here's the thing. Some people have that proclivity, and if watching it when there's no real child, if it's AI, and that prevents somebody from actually acting this out, has a cathartic effect, I would say.
It.
There's evidence that watching
here's the
that it has a cathartic effect on actual essay.
Here's the difference. Okay, so it sounds like you're saying, well, how can we really know that people desire something virtually that they don't also? We have no idea if they really want it in real life if it primes them for that.
That's not what I'm saying.
What you're saying is that it might be confined to the virtual, and so they don't have the desire to do it in real life.
I'm saying all the evidence that we have shows that it either is confined to the virtual or is actually preventing. At least when it comes to sexual aggression, yes. I have 3 studies right here that show that.
One of the main? Is it true that one of the main reasons? There's different reasons women quit OnlyFans. Right?
Have you heard the expression "monkey see, monkey do"?
Right. Mm-hmm. Is one of the main reasons that they find they make more money doing escorting?
I have no idea.
I've
never heard of anyone I know. Anyone I know has never quit to do escorting. No.
Do any people who do OnlyFans make supplementary income from escorting?
Some do. It's against the rules of OnlyFans. If they found out, you get kicked off. But
or other cam sites.
I'm sure they.
Yeah, they're just trying to have a monopoly on taxing the girls' content, so to speak.
Do but
what? So do you think then in those cases that it's plausible someone begins on a cam site, they're excited by this virtually, and then they want to take it to the next level, and that's how that happens?
What do you mean? What happens? They're now sexually assaulting the
No, they're having a physical active intercourse with this person they first experienced on cams.
Yeah, what does that have to do though with having higher rates of child sexual
What I'm saying then is that if we see in these circumstances where someone begins, they're aroused by virtual contact with someone, and then it instincts, well, I want to take it to the next level. That's going to really make me aroused, and go and meet that cam girl in person. Why wouldn't that apply also to?
So the argument he's making is a slippery slope argument.
Virtual acts
because
of rape.
All the data shows that it doesn't. Even people like Jordan Peterson have talked about how there seems to be a cathartic effect from watching it that actually leads to less of this happening in real life. And I have some studies that show that you have no evidence saying that people watching this leads to more of it. In fact, there's evidence that's leaning in the other direction.
Wait, many Destiny, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, these arguments are completely and totally disconnected. The idea that if somebody gets into some type of work, they might continue on down that type of work doesn't at all feed into well, isn't it obvious that if somebody watches porn, that's like saying if you start drinking at all, you're going to become an alcoholic, and it's well, why would you say that? Well, isn't it likely that somebody that works as a bar back might become a bartender someday? So why wouldn't that argument? There's no connection whatsoever.
There are many cases of people that are ultimately caught for the use of child sexual assault material. And one of the things that gets them extra penalties is that they were actively seeking to act out the fantasy that they were playing and the attacks that they were doing against these children in their mind on real life children. They had difficulty accessing real life children. Yeah, so I think it's a very much living in unreality argument that I think.
You're living in unreality because you have no evidence of this actually increasing that.
To say that people can live this whole life in their minds, that they're acting out in their bodies through ejaculation, and that's not going to affect anything that they do in the real world.
But yet that seems to be the case with movies and video games, where a kid can sit in front of a computer and play 12 hours of violent video games a day, and lo and behold, he doesn't go out in the real world and kill somebody.
I think training yourself and actively sexually arousing yourself and ejaculating over these activities.
I don't think there's
yeah, I don't actually know about that. But it does seem to me that controls should be placed on children going to certain websites and the nature of the content on those websites, because ultimately there is a certain culture you're trying to promote, even in a bedroom fun sense, right? And it shouldn't just be anything goes, because in real life, not anything goes, right?
Mental arousal that happens.
I agree they won't always
mental
go.
arousal that happens when you're out there killing people in
But
video
to
games,
say there's
screaming
no
like kill you
connection,
and
I
kill you.
think is an
Well, if there's
how
no,
do you
the connection has to be,
explain
the connection has to be
child
proved
sexual
with.
abuse has gone down since the
That's
proliferation
not
of
true,
porn.
Jasmine.
There is.
It has not. Child sexual abuse has not gone down.
A study from the University of New Hampshire that the decline of 30% or more in
Is this reported child sexual abuse, Jasmine?
Yes, but so where's your evidence then that it's just unreported now, but it's going up because people are watching? Where is that evidence?
We have insane rates of child sexual abuse in this country,
and it's gone up since the proliferation of porn.
Well, it's in conjunction with the proliferation
then
of
it
porn.
should go up. If porn being introduced to society has made this worse, then where is that evidence?
It's not just porn. It's also we haven't talked about this very much. It's also prostitution. You want data? I'll give you data. Look up Cho et al. CHO, a 2013 study covering 150 different countries showing an increase in human trafficking when prostitution is legalized.
Wait, no, none of us even disagree with this.
Yeah, that's.
But that's sex work. Why is sex work bad? Prostitution is sex work. Sex work's bad because it leads to other bad things like human trafficking.
But
wait, that doesn't make the sex work itself bad.
Yes, it does, because you can use other methods.
Hold on, wait. Let's say it was the case that most of the alcohol we drink in the United States came from the cartel. Would that make alcohol bad?
No, it would make it bad if using alcohol also fueled some other extremely dangerous, violent form.
That's what I just said.
Use.
Let's say that hypothetically opium was grown in the fields of Afghanistan, and that was a huge export for them. Does that make it bad to consume all medical products related to painkillers?
No, I'm not talking about remote cooperation with evil. What I am saying is that if you have different policies when it comes to something like prostitution, for example, if you have a policy where you legalize it, and so it's legal to both buy and sell sexual services, like you say you have in Germany or other countries where that's allowed, you have an increase in human trafficking. But if you have other countries
but the increase in human trafficking isn't necessary for the sex work. It's just a byproduct of an unregulated market. Yes, it is, and I will explain.
Indeed. So if it's a byproduct, and it's a very dangerous byproduct, you might want to put greater controls on it. Actually, the illicit substances argument is good in this case, because if the substance wasn't controlled, like the access were more free. Again, it really does depend on the level of control the government has over the country, right? Because let's say they deregulated like illicit substances in a narco state, right? I don't think it would make it better. It would make it much, much worse, because effectively the country is already run by gangs. So, it would just allow even less control. It would be even more deregulated, as it were.
Yes, it is, and I will explain why. Okay. Because when you legalize prostitution, let's say human trafficking goes up or down, there's going to be two different things that happen here. There's going to be the scale effect and the substitution effect. Okay. So the substitution effect would be, you would think if prostitution is legalized, human trafficking will go down because you have legal prostitutes now. They substitute for the illegal prostitutes. And the hope would be it would go down because of this substitution.
Wait, what is it? I'm sorry, what is the substitution effect?
There's the question of the relationship between human trafficking.
Wait, I'm just curious, what is the substitution effect?
The substitution effect is that human trafficking would go down, illegal prostitution goes down because it's substituted with legal prostitutes. You have sex with a legal prostitute instead of an illegal one. Okay. That's the substitution effect.
Okay, gotcha.
That would drive the number down. The other problem, though, is the scale effect. That when you make it legal, there is now a massive increase in demand for this, and there's not enough prostitutes in order to satisfy the demand, so trafficking goes up in order to meet that demand. So the Cho et al. Study 2013, 150 countries, including longitudinal to show Germany before and after, so it's not correlative, shows that the scale effect always dominates the substitution effect. So when I look at that, I say, legalizing prostitution this way, that seems really bad. Maybe we should do something else like the Nordic model, where you don't criminalize women for selling sex, but you criminalize men for buying it, and that really
Okay,
cuts
so then
down
back to my original question. Then wait, before we jump into a whole other thing. Okay, so back to my other question. If for alcohol, then, if it was the case that we just every time we buy more alcohol, it seems like in either cartels or gangs or whatever are the ones producing it, would you then say that we ought to outlaw alcohol because it seems like every time we increase our purchasing of it, it seems to come from unethical sources?
We should
Probably yes. If that were the case, probably yes.
Outlaw alcohol if there are more social ills than social benefits.
No one is talking about social ills or benefits.
Yes, that is always the
That is the case for illicit substances.
The case that you make when
you said that there was a substitution.
Can I finish?
Hold on. You just talked for like 30 minutes. You want to answer a simple question?
I did answer, and you're interrupting me. I said that if when you have social benefit, when you choose to outlaw something, you have social benefits and social ills that you have to weigh involved. Alcohol provides social benefits, and there are also social ills that are associated with it.
I'm only talking about the substitution and the scale effect. Those are the only two. I don't know why we're bringing this whole other thing now.
You brought up alcohol.
Destiny, what's the question that you wanted him answered?
He said that there is a substitution effect where when you legalize something, you bring in legal prostitutes instead of the consumption of illegal prostitutes. However, the scale effect, due to the increase in the overall consumption of this particular good or service, leads to more people being brought in and sex trafficked. So the fact that you're trying to substitute legal for illegal people doesn't matter, because even if the percentage of illegal consumption decreases, the overall per capita increases, which causes an increase in the illegal amount of prostitutes being used. Therefore increases sex trafficking.
Okay,
so my question was, well, let's say if we take something like alcohol or any other good or service you can buy, if it was the case that the mass scale consumption of this necessarily means that it's being consumed from countries that are engaged in slave shops or drug trade or cartels or whatever, would you outlaw any of this?
It's not.
That's not the point he's making. Destiny's. He understood totally and then went to a false premise. All right. Okay, let's end the video there. Hit the like, hit the sub, hit all the notifications, drop me a donation like Hunter M, Adrian R, Tom and Bobby, Dylan, Renaissance Press, and Brian. Shout out to you, most recent Patreon subscriber. My Patreon can be found at patreon.com/theheliosblog. My books are at bit.ly/heliosbooks. If you want coaching, message me at theheliosblog@gmail.com. I'm happy to start you right in. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Especially if you listen to the end, I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.